The first drop hit his cheek like a warning. Then came another, colder, sharper. Within seconds, the gray sky split open, unleashing a torrent that swallowed the park in sound and motion. The laughter of children faded. The joggers vanished beneath umbrellas, and the rustle of leaves became the hiss of rain beating against earth. Ethan Blackwood blinked up at the sky, rain streaking his small, pale face. The 6-year-old tried to tilt his head back against the cushion of his wheelchair, but the wheels had already sunk halfway into the softening ground. A flash of silver lightning cracked above the tree line. He flinched. The caretaker, Ms. Dorsey, was gone, her voice still echoing faintly in his head. "Just a minute, sweetheart, I need to take this call." A minute. That was all she'd said. But minutes could stretch forever when you couldn't move your own body. He tried to shift to turn the joystick that controlled his chair, but the mechanism whined uselessly. The mud clung to the tires, sucking them down like glue. His small hands trembled on the armrests. He could feel the chair tilt just slightly, then more, the right wheel lifting an inch, then two. "Wait, no," he gasped. The world tipped. The wheelchair lurched sideways, the motors clicking helplessly, and suddenly he was falling. The impact was soft but shocking, the thick mud swallowing his right arm, his face smearing into the cold earth. Rain filled his mouth and nose. He coughed, tried to push up, but his muscles refused. His arms felt like wet paper, trembling with effort that led nowhere. "Help!" he cried, but the sound was swallowed instantly by the downpour. People passed. He saw them, legs, shoes, umbrellas. A woman in heels, her skirt clinging to her knees. A man in a suit, head ducked beneath his jacket. None of them slowed. None of them looked. One even stepped around him carefully, muttering something about being late. The mud was cold. It crept beneath his collar, soaking through his sweater, chilling his skin. Tears blurred his vision, mixing with the rain. His chest hurt from shouting. His heart hammered not just from fear, but from the deeper, heavier ache of being unseen. For all his father's wealth, all the mansions, the cars, the gleaming towers with their mirrored windows, it meant nothing here. Here in the mud, Ethan was no one. He thought of his dad's promise that morning. "You'll always be safe, buddy. I'd never let anything happen to you." But Richard Blackwood wasn't here. His father was in meetings on planes, solving problems that made headlines. Ethan's problem, his life overturned in the mud, was invisible to the world. "Help," he whispered again, weaker now. And then, movement. A blur of color in the gray. A figure darted from the edge of the playground, small and wiry. She wore a jacket 2 sizes too big, its hood falling off one shoulder and shoes so torn that the rain seemed to pour straight through them. She skidded to a stop in front of him, breathing hard, eyes wide. "Hey!" she shouted, her voice bright, cutting through the storm. "Are you okay?" Ethan blinked through the rain. The girl looked no older than 7, maybe 8. Mud splattered her knees. Her dark hair clung to her face, and yet her eyes, sharp, alive, never wavered. I can't get up," he stammered, shame heating his face even as the rain chilled it. "Hold on," she said, already dropping her backpack to the ground. She waded into the mud, her tiny hands grasping the frame of his wheelchair. "I got you," she grunted, bracing her weight, trying to right the chair. The wheels refused at first, mired too deep, but she didn't stop. Her sneakers sank, her knees splashed, and yet she pushed again, teeth clenched, jaw set. Ethan stared. Nobody had even paused to help him. But this girl, this stranger with broken shoes, was giving everything she had. Finally, with a wet squelch, the chair shifted upright. "There," she said, panting, her face smeared with mud but triumphant. "Told you I got it." Ethan laughed, the sound shaky, disbelieving. "You're really strong," she shrugged, brushing her hair out of her eyes. "I carry my brother's laundry sometimes. It's heavier than this." He smiled. For the first time that day, the rain didn't seem so cruel. As thunder rolled in the distance, the girl knelt beside him, checking his scraped hand like a nurse would. "You okay now?" Ethan nodded, rain dripping from his lashes. "Yeah, thanks. Good," she said, standing again. "People shouldn't just walk by like that." He wanted to ask her name. He wanted to thank her properly. But before he could speak, a shout came from across the park. A man's voice, deep and urgent, calling his name. "Ethan!" The girl turned, startled. Ethan's face lit up in recognition. His father was running toward them through the rain, suit soaked, eyes wide with panic. The girl took a step back, watching the man kneel beside his son, relief breaking across his face. For a brief, strange moment, she looked out of place like a ghost fading at dawn. But Ethan saw her, and as Richard pulled him close, Ethan whispered one word through the rain. She helped me. And somewhere in that moment, before names or thanks or promises were spoken, the storm softened, just a little, as if the sky itself had noticed. The rain hadn't stopped. It only changed its rhythm. Now it came in waves, soft one moment, hammering the next, like the sky couldn't decide whether to forgive or punish. Richard Blackwood knelt in the mud, his tailored suit ruined, but he didn't care. His arms were wrapped around his son, his voice a mix of relief and reprimand. Ethan, you can't just... God, are you hurt? Did you hit your head? Ethan shook his head weakly. I'm okay, Dad, I fell. But his gaze flicked past his father's shoulder. She helped me. Richard turned, following his son's line of sight. A small figure stood a few feet away, rain dripping from her hair, her oversized jacket plastered to her arms. Her shoes squelched in the mud. She wasn't afraid, just uncertain, like a stray cat caught somewhere it didn't belong. You helped my son? Richard asked. Lucy nodded. Yeah. She said it simply, like it wasn't worth mentioning. Something in that tone made Richard pause. Most people in this city, especially adults, stumbled over themselves when they recognized his face. But this little girl didn't know him. Or if she did, she didn't care. Thank you, he said quietly. Lucy shrugged. Anyone would have. The words hit harder than she meant them to. Because just moments ago, no one had. Behind them, the caretaker stood frozen, drenched, her phone still in hand, her face pale with guilt. Richard's jaw clenched. You're finished, he said without looking at her. Go. The woman opened her mouth, shut it again, and fled without a word. Lucy glanced from father to son, then back at the man's black SUV idling at the edge of the park. Its headlights sliced through the curtain of rain like twin ghosts. She should have left. This wasn't her world. But something about Ethan, the quiet way he looked at her as if she were the first real person he'd ever seen, made her stay. You live nearby? Richard asked suddenly. Lucy hesitated. Kinda, Westside Gardens. Richard frowned slightly. He knew the name, one of those apartment blocks that made headlines for all the wrong reasons. Poverty, fires, police calls. Well, he said, straightening up, we'll give you a ride home. Lucy's eyes widened. Oh no, you don't have to. I can walk. In this? Richard gestured toward the downpour. Absolutely not. Ethan smiled faintly. Please come. I owe you. And just like that, the walls around her softened. They moved together through the drenched park. The driver hurried ahead with an umbrella, but it was useless. The three of them were already soaked to the bone. As they approached the SUV, Lucy hesitated again. The car gleamed like something from a dream, sleek, black, and expensive enough to feed her family for a year. Inside, it smelled of leather and warmth. The windows fogged instantly from the difference in temperature. Lucy sat rigidly on the edge of the seat, afraid to drip mud anywhere, though every inch of her was covered in it. Richard noticed her discomfort. It's just a car, Lucy, he said gently. Don't worry about the mess. She gave a small smile, unsure whether he was teasing or serious. Ethan watched her curiously. You really fixed my chair, he said, his voice soft. You weren't scared at all. I was, she admitted, just not enough to walk away. That answer hung in the air, heavier than the rain outside. Richard studied her through the rearview mirror. There was something about her voice, calm, thoughtful, older than her years. What school do you go to? He asked. Westside Elementary, she said quickly. 2nd grade. Then, almost shyly, I'm in the gifted program, though. They let me do 4th grade math. Richard's brow lifted, impressed. Really? That's quite an achievement. Lucy shrugged again, uncomfortable with praise. I just like figuring out how things work. Ethan brightened. Me too. Dad builds robots and computer stuff. He says I'll help design them one day. Lucy turned to him, her eyes widening. Your dad builds robots? Richard chuckled softly. Among other things, for a moment, the car filled with warmth and wonder, two children discovering they spoke the same secret language. But as they turned off the main road, the streetlights grew sparser, the puddles deeper and the buildings older. The windshield wipers thudded a slower rhythm now, their squeaks echoing against broken brick walls. When they finally pulled up to Westside Gardens, the contrast was jarring. The paint on the building peeled in long gray strips. A neon sign buzzed weakly from a convenience store across the street. Somewhere above, a window slammed shut. "You can drop me at the corner," Lucy said suddenly. "It's fine." Richard ignored her. "We'll see you inside." He lifted Ethan into his arms with practiced ease. Lucy led the way up 3 flights of dimly lit stairs, the walls damp with moisture, her small shoulders tense. She stopped outside a cracked door labeled 3C. "Mom, I'm home," she called. The smell hit first, cigarettes, cheap beer, and something fried hours ago. A tired woman in a waitress uniform looked up from a stack of bills at the kitchen table. Her eyes widened at the sight of the drenched billionaire and his son in her doorway. "Lucy," she whispered. "What? Who?" "Mr. Blackwood," Richard said, extending a hand she didn't dare shake. "Your daughter helped my son today. She's quite remarkable." Rosa Martinez blinked, recognition dawning. "That Blackwood?" Before she could respond, a deep, slurred voice rumbled from down the hallway. "Who's at the door, Rosa?" Lucy froze. Richard's eyes narrowed. A man appeared. A heavy figure, unshaven, the stench of alcohol preceding him. He took in the scene, his muddy daughter a billionaire in his living room, and the promise of something he couldn't yet name flickering behind his bloodshot eyes. "Well," Frank Martinez said slowly, a smile creeping across his face. "Ain't this something?" The air in the tiny apartment thickened, and in that moment, Lucy wished more than anything that the rain outside would come back and drown out what was about to happen next. The SUV pulled to a slow stop in front of the apartment block, the tires splashing through shallow puddles that reflected the gray, bruised sky. Lucy clutched the edges of her oversized jacket, hesitant to step out. The warmth inside the car was a sharp contrast to the cold dampness outside, and for a moment she simply stared at the vehicle, as though it belonged to a world she'd never seen before. Her small hands trembled slightly, not from fear of the rain, but from the surreal weight of being noticed by someone like Richard Blackwood. "Come on," Ethan said softly, squeezing her hand. "You helped me. You deserve a ride, don't you?" She nodded, swallowing the lump in her throat. Her shoes, already soaked, squelched against the asphalt as she followed him and his father up the cracked concrete steps of West Side Gardens. The walls were damp, the paint peeling in long gray streaks, and the stairwell smelled of mold and something faintly metallic. Each step creaked beneath her small frame, echoing in the narrow shaft like a ticking clock counting down to some unknown moment. When they reached the door to apartment 3C, Lucy hesitated. She could hear the familiar hum of the old refrigerator, the clatter of dishes in the sink, and the soft, weary sighs of her mother, Rosa, counting bills at the kitchen table. Her father, Frank, was nowhere in sight. She assumed he was resting, as he often did, though Lucy knew what that really meant. "Mom, I'm home," she called, her voice carrying more confidence than she felt. Rosa looked up, eyes widening as she took in the sight of the wet, unfamiliar man standing in her doorway and the boy in his arms. For a moment she simply stared, disbelief flickering across her features. "Lucy, who are these people?" "This is Ethan," Lucy said quickly, stepping forward. "He fell in the park. I helped him and his dad. They brought me home to say thank you." Richard Blackwood's gaze softened as he looked at Rosa. "Your daughter helped my son today," he said, "and I wanted to thank her personally." Rosa's mouth opened and closed. She wanted to say something polite, but the words caught in her throat. She had seen Richard Blackwood on magazine covers and news stories at charity galas, but here he was in her tiny apartment speaking directly to her. And he wasn't condescending or dismissive or loud. He was calm, deliberate, almost human. Before Rosa could respond, the apartment door at the far end of the hallway creaked open, and a deep, slurred voice filled the space. "What's all this, Rosa? Who the hell are these people?" Lucy froze. Her heart sank. Frank appeared in the doorway, unshaven, bloodshot-eyed, the scent of alcohol clinging to him. He was a mountain of a man, and in that small apartment he seemed to dominate the room with every step. He stopped only when he noticed Ethan, still in Richard's arms, and something in the boy's frailty seemed to silence his bravado. "They're just thanking Lucy," she said quietly, stepping forward instinctively. "I helped him in the park." "That's it?" Frank's gaze flicked between his daughter and the billionaire in the room, calculating. "Dangerous. Helping? Huh. Is that what you call it? Walking around in mud like some charity project?" Richard's expression remained calm. but his voice carried the quiet authority of a man used to commanding rooms. It's not charity. It's recognition. Lucy did the right thing when so many would have looked away. Frank laughed, sharp and bitter. Recognition, huh? And what are you offering her? A pat on the back? Some fancy school to keep her out of my hair? Richard stepped forward, his tone firm but gentle. No, Mr. Martinez. I'd like to offer Lucy a full scholarship to Westbrook Academy. Tuition, books, uniforms, transportation, all of it. She's a gifted child. She deserves the opportunity to learn, to grow, and to thrive. Rosa blinked, stunned, while Lucy's eyes widened, a mixture of disbelief and hope washing over her. The weight of her life's struggles pressed against her chest, and suddenly, possibility felt real for the first time in years. She can go? Lucy whispered, barely daring to breathe. Yes, Richard said, if she wants to. Frank's expression shifted almost instantly, his jovial sneer twisting into something sharper, something more possessive. Hold on, he growled. You can't just waltz into my home and take my kid to some rich people's school. She's my daughter. She belongs here. Lucy took a small step back, fear flashing across her face. Her mother's hand found hers, squeezing tightly. Richard didn't flinch. She belongs wherever she can be safe, where she can learn, and where she can be valued for who she is, not where fear and neglect hold her back. Your daughter deserves that. For a long moment, the room was silent except for the hum of the refrigerator and the faint tapping of rain against the window. Frank's jaw tightened, but Rosa's eyes filled with something Lucy had rarely seen, a glimmer of pride, soft and trembling. Lucy swallowed, finally finding her voice. I want to go, she said softly. Richard nodded, offering her a small, reassuring smile. Then it settled. We'll take care of everything. You won't have to worry about anything. And in that cramped, dimly lit apartment, with the storm's echo still clinging to the walls, Lucy felt the first real warmth of hope in her chest. For the first time, she could imagine a life beyond mud, beyond fear, beyond the weight of a world that had long ignored her. Ethan, still in his father's arms, reached over and squeezed her hand. I'm glad you're coming with me, he whispered. Lucy looked at him, and for the first time, she allowed herself to believe that maybe, just maybe, she wasn't invisible anymore. Outside, the rain had softened to a drizzle, the clouds beginning to part as if the sky itself were acknowledging the fragile, newfound promise of something better. Lucy Martinez had never seen anything like Westbrook Academy. The gates alone seemed to touch the clouds, iron wrought and polished to a black sheen that reflected the morning sun. She clutched the strap of her backpack, the worn fabric of her clothes making her feel painfully out of place against the sea of uniforms, polished shoes, and glossy hair that streamed past her. Every step she took on the cobblestone path toward the main building felt like a drumbeat announcing her arrival, loud and clumsy against the whispers of the other children. Inside the academy was a cathedral of learning. Sunlight poured through enormous windows, bouncing off marble floors and casting long golden beams across ornate staircases. The air smelled faintly of polished wood and old books. It should have been awe-inspiring, and for a moment Lucy froze, overwhelmed by the vastness of it all. Her life had been cramped apartments, broken elevators, and puddles of mud. Here, everything gleamed, and it reminded her painfully of what she had never had. Ethan was beside her, guiding her gently with his hand on her elbow. His wheelchair rolled smoothly over the marble, motors humming softly. You'll be okay, he said, smiling, eyes bright with encouragement. It's not so scary once you start. Lucy nodded, but the knot in her stomach refused to loosen. She caught glimpses of other children, some whispering, some laughing, some staring at her with curiosity that bordered on judgment. She noticed the way they studied her shoes, scuffed and patched, her jacket a size too large, the way she smelled faintly of the rain and the streets. She had expected scrutiny, but this was something else. They stopped at the entrance to the auditorium where the first assembly was being held. Students murmured as the headmistress stepped forward, tall and severe, yet with a kind smile. Welcome, students, she began. Today we welcome new talent into our academy, and we celebrate those who rise not only in intellect but in courage. Her eyes scanned the crowd, lingering just slightly on Lucy before moving on. Lucy felt Ethan squeeze her hand. She took a deep breath and stepped forward. But then she saw her, Olivia Blackwood. Ethan's older sister sat in the front row, cello case beside her, hair perfectly combed, uniform impeccable, posture flawless. Her eyes narrowed as they landed on Lucy, the glint of interest in her gaze hardening quickly into something sharper, curiosity edged with the faintest trace of disdain. Olivia's lips curved into a polite smile that didn't reach her eyes, the kind of smile that said, "I know who belongs here and you do not." Lucy's chest tightened. She had expected to be noticed, maybe even stared at. But this, Olivia's gaze seemed to measure her like a ruler, weighing every scuffed shoe, every dirty patch of jacket, every sign of a life lived in struggle. "Don't let her intimidate you," Ethan whispered. "She's complicated, but you can do this." Lucy swallowed, forcing herself to lift her chin. Complicated or not, she was here. She had been brought here for a reason. She had helped a boy who couldn't help himself, a boy whose father could change the world. And now she had the chance to prove that she belonged. The assembly began, and Lucy found herself seated among the new students. She noticed the differences immediately. Some spoke with clipped accents, others with confidence that was effortless, almost rehearsed. She kept her hands folded in her lap, tried not to squirm as the headmistress spoke about expectations, opportunities, and the responsibilities that came with being a gifted child. After the assembly, students streamed out into the hallways. Lucy's legs ached, her back stiff from sitting so long, but her eyes darted everywhere, drinking in everything. The grand library with its towering shelves, the science labs that smelled of chemicals and electricity, the music rooms lined with polished instruments, and then she felt it, a hand on her shoulder. Lucy, right? She turned to see a girl about her age, uniform pressed, hair braided neatly. "I'm Mara," she said. "I've been assigned to show you around." Lucy nodded, grateful for the familiar voice. Mara led her through corridors, explaining class schedules and lab rules. Yet everywhere they went, Lucy could feel it, the silent eyes of Olivia, tracking her like a predator circling its prey. Later, in the science lab, Lucy's heart leapt as she saw the equipment laid out before her. Microscopes, circuits, wires, a small robotic arm. She felt a surge of excitement she hadn't felt in years. She knelt beside a table, eyes wide, fingers itching to explore. Ethan watched her from his wheelchair, a proud grin spreading across his face. "Careful," he said, though his tone was playful. "These are delicate." Lucy only laughed, the sound ringing clear and strong in the lab. For the first time in her life, she wasn't thinking about broken elevators, cold dinners, or her father's temper. She was thinking about possibilities, and yet outside the lab, the shadows of the academy loomed large. Olivia lingered near the doorway, watching every movement, her cello forgotten for the moment. There was admiration there, yes, but also a spark of envy, a flicker of the rivalry that was about to grow, unnoticed by everyone except the two girls. Lucy Martinez had entered a world of brilliance and opportunity, but she would quickly learn that intelligence alone would not protect her from judgment, envy, or the invisible chains of class and expectation. Somewhere in the polished halls of Westbrook Academy, a storm was brewing, not of rain this time, but of tension, secrets, and challenges that would test the courage that had first drawn her to Ethan in the park. And in that moment, as she stood at the threshold of this new life, she understood something profound. She had survived mud and rain. She had stood up when no one else would, and now, the real challenge was just beginning. The morning air inside Westbrook Academy was sharp and electric, a charged stillness that seemed to hum beneath the polished floors and gilded ceilings. Lucy woke early, her stomach tight with anticipation, and for a moment the cramped apartment block, the mud and the rain felt like a distant memory. Yet the knot in her chest reminded her, this world was not her own, and she would have to fight for every inch of it. She arrived at the science lab before the other students, her backpack bouncing against her shoulders. The room smelled of ozone and metal, of circuits waiting to spark to life. Her fingers itched to touch, to experiment, to prove that she belonged. Beside her, Ethan wheeled quietly into the room, his eyes bright with the same excitement she felt. "Ready for our first test?" he asked. Lucy nodded, but her eyes were drawn to the far corner. Olivia Blackwood sat at a lab table, hair perfect, fingers twirling a pencil as if she owned the place. The faintest smirk played on her lips when she saw Lucy. "New girl," Olivia murmured, loud enough for Lucy to hear. "I hope you know what you're doing. This isn't some playground project." Lucy felt her cheeks heat, but she squared her shoulders. I learn fast, she said evenly. And I like solving problems. A teacher entered, a tall man with sharp glasses and an enthusiasm that seemed to vibrate off the walls. Today, students, you will design a functional robotic arm capable of lifting small objects. Precision, creativity, and ingenuity will be rewarded. Lucy's heart raced. She glanced at Ethan, whose grin reminded her that fear was just another obstacle. They quickly scanned the tools laid out before them. Tiny motors, sensors, wires coiled like snakes, microchips that blinked and hummed with potential. Olivia approached their workspace, her presence cold and deliberate. Need some help? She asked, her tone polite, but her eyes sharpened like knives. Or are you just going to fumble around? Lucy met her gaze steadily. We'll manage. Ethan handed her a small motor. Lucy's fingers worked deftly, connecting wires and tightening screws. She remembered how she had helped her neighbor, Mr. Wilson, build a bike from scraps. Now her knowledge of improvisation became her secret weapon. Pieces that didn't quite fit together in theory suddenly clicked into place in practice. Olivia leaned closer, studying their design. Interesting approach, she said. There was a flicker of something in her expression. Curiosity. Grudging respect, but it vanished as quickly as it came. The lab grew tense as other students' machines whirred, sputtered, or collapsed under their own weight. Lucy's creation, improvised and unconventional, lifted a small metal block cleanly, then rotated it with precision. Ethan clapped quietly, his excitement barely contained. Not bad for a newcomer, Olivia said, her voice low but edged with something sharper this time. But don't get comfortable. The next challenge won't be this easy. Lucy didn't respond, her eyes scanning the room. Something felt off, not dangerous, not immediate, but a subtle tension like a shadow stretching across the lab. Every glance from Olivia, every whisper behind their backs, carried a quiet weight, a reminder that not everyone here wished her success. As the bell rang, signaling the end of the session, Lucy packed her tools quickly. The corridor outside was bustling, polished floors reflecting the sunlight that streamed through tall windows. And yet, behind the chatter of students, Lucy caught a glimpse of a folded note, slipped under the edge of their lab table. Her heart skipped. Carefully, she unfolded it. Be careful who you trust. Some things here are not what they seem. Ethan leaned over her shoulder. Do you know who left it? Lucy shook her head, a shiver running down her spine. The note had no signature, but in that instant she realized Westbrook Academy, for all its grandeur, was more complicated than she had imagined. It was not just a place of learning. It was a battlefield of wits, secrets, and unspoken rivalries. Lunch was no easier. The dining hall glittered with silver cutlery and crystal-clear water glasses. Students clustered into familiar groups, whispering, laughing, or throwing curious glances at the new girl who seemed unremarkable at first glance, yet had already displayed genius in the lab. Olivia approached Lucy again, sitting across from her uninvited. You've got potential, she said, leaning forward. But potential isn't everything. In this place, you'll need more than brains. You'll need allies, timing, and strategy. Lucy nodded, sensing both a warning and a challenge. Every word Olivia spoke felt like a chess move, precise and loaded. When lunch ended, Lucy returned to the library, determined to prepare for the next challenge, the next assignment, the next obstacle. She was aware now that Westbrook was not just a school, it was a crucible. And in that crucible, she would either prove herself or be consumed. As she flipped through textbooks and diagrams, her mind replayed the note. Who had warned her and why? The thought lingered, twisting around her like smoke, an invisible weight that threatened to unseat the fragile confidence she had built in the park, in the rain and in the lab. But Lucy Martinez was no stranger to danger, to fear, or to the shadows cast by those who underestimated her. She had faced mud, storms, and neglect, and she had survived. And now, in the marble halls of Westbrook Academy, she understood. This was only the beginning. The morning air at Westbrook Academy felt charged with electricity, thicker than sunlight or polished marble. Today wasn't just another day. It was the day of the annual Junior Innovators Challenge, a science competition where only the sharpest, most creative minds could rise. The auditorium buzzed with anticipation, the kind of hum that made Lucy's stomach tighten. Students carried sleek robotic prototypes, beakers of chemicals glowing faintly under the fluorescent lights, and laptops brimming with coded programs. Lucy's heart raced as she wheeled Ethan into the massive hall. Her own invention, a robotic arm that could mimic human gestures and grip with surprising strength, was packed carefully in its case. Every wire, screw, and sensor had been tested and retested, every movement rehearsed in her mind. She could feel the tension in the air, and she knew she wasn't the only one ready to win. Olivia Blackwood appeared moments later, her uniform flawless, hair gleaming under the ceiling lights, and a calculated smirk tugging at her lips. She carried a robotic drone that hovered slightly above her palm, sensors blinking in perfect synchronization. She didn't glance at Lucy, she didn't need to. Her eyes already measured, calculated, and dismissed anyone who might pose a threat. The competition coordinator, a tall man with a booming voice, stepped to the front. Welcome, students. Today you will not only demonstrate your inventions, but also present their real-world applications. Judges will be looking for innovation, execution, and creativity. The winner receives the Westbrook Medal of Innovation and the opportunity to join the Senior Innovators Program. Lucy swallowed, feeling the weight of the hall, the cameras, and the spectators bearing down on her. This was bigger than mud, bigger than rain, bigger than any street corner challenge she had faced. And yet fear didn't stop her. It had never stopped her. Ethan squeezed her hand. "You've got this," he whispered, his voice steady and full of quiet conviction. The first round began. Robots scuttled across the polished floor, drones hovered in precise patterns, and mechanical arms picked up blocks with mechanical grace. Lucy's robotic arm performed flawlessly, gripping the weighted cubes and placing them on a conveyor belt without hesitation. Murmurs ran through the crowd. This new girl was not just competent, she was extraordinary. But then came the first hint of trouble. Olivia's drone, sleek and sophisticated, hovered near Lucy's station. A faint spark jumped from the control panel. Lucy's arm froze mid-grip. Her chest tightened. Something was wrong. Olivia's eyes flicked toward her, a ghost of a smirk curling at the edges of her mouth. Lucy's mind raced. Her programming had been flawless, her wiring checked twice. This was no accident. Someone was sabotaging her work. "Ethan," she hissed, leaning close. "I think Olivia's trying to mess with it." Ethan's hands flew over the small controls of her backup interface. "I can reroute the signals. Hold on." Sweat dripped down Lucy's forehead as she adjusted wires with trembling fingers, the clock ticking louder in her mind than any announcement. Every student around her seemed oblivious to the tension, the smooth hum of their own creations filling the space like a wall she had to climb. Finally, the robotic arm shuddered and resumed its task. The audience erupted in polite applause, unaware of the sabotage that had almost ruined her. Lucy exhaled, her body trembling, adrenaline making her hands shake. She had survived mud, storms, and neglect. Now she had survived sabotage under the gaze of an elite academy, and she was not defeated. The second round began. Students were assigned to demonstrate practical applications. Olivia's drone demonstrated surveying a simulated disaster area, calculating precise measurements with mechanical perfection. Lucy's arm lifted fragile beakers, poured liquids into tiny containers, and even delicately wrote messages on paper, a testament to creativity under pressure. Judges leaned forward, whispering among themselves, clearly impressed. And then came the final test. A collaborative challenge where two students would pair and merge their inventions for maximum functionality. The pairs would be randomly assigned. Lucy's stomach dropped. She watched as the names were drawn. When the final card was pulled, it was hers. And the name beside hers was unmistakable: Olivia Blackwood. The auditorium went still, the air thick with anticipation. Lucy felt every eye on them, every whisper circling like vultures. Olivia's expression was unreadable, almost predatory. Lucy's mind raced. Could she trust her? Could she survive the challenge without succumbing to sabotage again? "Looks like we're partners," Olivia said softly, her tone neutral, almost casual, but Lucy could hear the challenge behind it. "Don't mess up," Lucy nodded, her pulse hammering. "We'll do this together." For the next tense minutes, wires sparked, motors hummed, and gears clicked as the two girls combined their inventions. Olivia's drone provided aerial stability, while Lucy's robotic arm executed delicate manipulations. At first, they clashed. Olivia's precision collided with Lucy's improvisation, but slowly, they found a rhythm, a synergy neither had expected. When the final buzzer sounded, Their combined invention completed the challenge flawlessly. The judges conferred, whispers rippling through the auditorium. Then finally the announcement, first place. Lucy Martinez and Olivia Blackwood. Lucy's chest felt tight, a mix of triumph and disbelief. She had not only survived the sabotage, she had turned it into a victory. Olivia's eyes flicked toward her, and for the first time there was something other than rivalry, something almost like respect. But as applause filled the hall, Lucy's eyes scanned the audience. Someone had slipped another note under her table. Not everyone here wants you to win. Watch your back. Trust no one completely. Her hands tightened around it, a cold knot forming in her stomach. The victory was sweet, but the warning was clear. Westbrook Academy was not just a school. It was a battlefield, and she had just learned the first rule. The sun had barely risen over the sprawling grounds of Westbrook Academy, but Lucy Martinez was already awake. Her mind raced as she replayed the events of the previous day. The sabotage, the competition, the final buzzer, Olivia's grudging respect, and the mysterious note that had warned her to trust no one completely. She had thought the competition was the peak of challenge. Now she realized it had only been the first layer of something far deeper, far more dangerous. Ethan wheeled beside her, cheerful as always, oblivious to the weight in Lucy's chest. "Ready for the tour of the Senior Innovators Wing?" he asked, grinning. His optimism was infectious, and for a moment Lucy allowed herself to breathe. "Sure," she said, forcing a smile, but her eyes lingered on the hallways, the towering windows, the locked doors marked with warnings about restricted access. Something about this wing whispered secrets, opportunities that promised glory but also concealed hazards. As they approached the Senior Innovators section, a low hum filled the air, vibrating through the polished floors. Lucy's curiosity piqued. She glanced at Ethan, who shrugged, unaware of the electricity in the room. Then she saw it. Through a slightly open door, a group of older students huddled around a strange device, wires twisting like serpents, a faint blue glow pulsing at its center. Her heart skipped. That device wasn't just experimental, it was dangerous. And it wasn't supposed to be activated yet. "Lucy," Ethan whispered, following her gaze. "I know," she said softly, her pulse quickening. "We need to see what they're doing." They edged closer, careful to stay in the shadows. One of the students, a tall boy with sharp features, noticed the movement and gestured to another. The device sparked, and suddenly a low, mechanical hum filled the hall. Lucy's stomach tightened. Something wasn't right. Then the unthinkable happened. The device jolted violently, and a wave of energy pulsed outward, knocking papers and small objects into the air. Ethan gasped, bracing himself in his wheelchair. Lucy's instincts kicked in. She lunged, yanking a control lever just in time to stabilize the apparatus. Sparks flew, wires hissed, and the older students froze in stunned silence. "You," the tall boy shouted, pointing at her. "How did you— I just did what needed to be done," Lucy said, her voice steady despite the adrenaline. "You're lucky I was here." For a tense moment, the room was silent, the hum fading into uneasy quiet. Then Olivia appeared, sliding into the doorway behind Lucy. Her expression was unreadable, sharp and calculating. "You saved the device?" she asked quietly, her voice laced with disbelief. Lucy nodded. "It's dangerous if it goes wrong. I couldn't just—" Olivia's gaze softened slightly, a hint of admiration breaking through her usual superiority. "Impressive," she said simply, "even for a new student." Before Lucy could respond, the headmistress arrived, flanked by teachers. Her eyes swept over the group, lingering on Lucy and Olivia. "It seems we have an unscheduled demonstration," she said, her tone cold but measured. "Miss Martinez, Miss Blackwood? Would you care to explain?" Lucy recounted what had happened, emphasizing the danger of the device and how she had prevented a disaster. Olivia nodded, corroborating the story. The tension was palpable. Every senior student in the room silent, weighing the new girl who had stepped into their midst and acted with courage and brilliance. The headmistress's gaze softened, though it retained a steely edge. "It appears your ingenuity extends beyond assignments," she said. "There is a place for students like you at Westbrook, students who act when others hesitate. Miss Martinez, you have proven yourself once again." Lucy's chest swelled with pride, but her mind still lingered on the note from yesterday, the warning that someone in the academy could not be trusted. Something gnawed at her. Who had left it? And why did it feel urgent, almost desperate? As the meeting broke up, Richard Blackwood appeared unexpectedly, standing in the doorway like a guardian. He smiled at Lucy, pride and relief etched into his features. "I heard about what happened," he said. "You acted bravely and wisely. Your mother would be proud." Lucy's eyes widened. "My mother?" Richard hesitated, then reached into his pocket and pulled out a small folded document. "I wasn't aware until recently, but your family, you have connections we never knew. I think it's time we get to the truth." Lucy unfolded the paper. Her hands trembled. It was a birth certificate, not hers but Olivia's, oddly enough, listing a different lineage than what she had been told. And then Richard revealed the truth. Lucy's parents had once been investors in Blackwood Industries. Misfortune and greed had separated their paths, but Lucy's talent, courage, and moral compass had been inherited from a lineage she never suspected. Olivia's eyes widened as the connection became clear. The two girls, rivals, competitors, yet now inexplicably linked, stood facing each other, the weight of generations and legacies stretching between them. "This explains the note," Lucy whispered, realization dawning. "Someone knew. Someone wanted me to survive, to get here." Richard nodded. "You've not only proven yourself, you've fulfilled something much larger than this school. The future of your family's legacy rests, in part, on the choices you make from this moment onward." The auditorium was silent, history and destiny colliding in a single moment. Lucy glanced at Olivia, who nodded once, sharply, a silent acknowledgement that rivalry and friendship, challenge and respect, could coexist. For Lucy, it was clear, the journey had only just begun. Westbrook Academy was not merely a school, it was a proving ground, a crucible where courage, intelligence, and integrity would be tested against ambition, secrecy, and betrayal. And somewhere deep inside, she knew this was her moment to define who she truly was. Not a girl from the streets, not a new student, not even a hero of a single rainy afternoon, but a force that would shape the world around her, in ways even she could not yet imagine. The rain had long passed, but the storm, Lucy realized, was only just beginning.